I'd want to make is the situation is not as binary as I think a lot of the debate would suggest it is. And even though, as General Kimmett said, and Mary Beth said, I think it's very predictable that we got to this place, especially after the call between Presidents Trump and Erdogan last December, where the original decision to pull out of Syria was made, and we had sort of a 10-month continuing resolution that finally came to its end. But the first point I would make is that it didn't have to be this way. And by that I mean that even though this was set up, as General Kimmett said, by the decision to work with the YPG in Syria, the outcome of that decision did not have to be a showdown between Turkey and the Syrian Kurds. It did not have to be a US policy decision of who to side with. And the clearest example, I think, that can demonstrate that is looking at the US relationship and then the Turkish relationship with Iraqi Kurds. Over a long period of time, Turkey has voiced the same concerns that it's now voicing about Syrian Kurds about northern Iraq. It was one of the reasons why the Turks were fearful of the outcome of the Gulf War in 1991, why they were concerned about Operation Provide Comfort, where the U.S. provided air cover for northern Iraq that allowed the establishment of an autonomous Kurdish region. It was one of the reasons why Turkey decided not to allow the United States to use Turkish territory and Turkish bases for the 2003 invasion of Iraq, because of their concerns that would empower Iraqi Kurds, which were actually at that point, Iraqi Kurdistan was the center of gravity for PKK operations. In fact, Turkey launched multiple operations into northern Iraq to target the PKK, and yet by 2012, 2013, one of the closest partners that Turkey had in the Middle East was in fact the KRG and the Iraqi Kurds. Why? Because through its relationship with the KRG, the US facilitated the development of political institutions that moved away from the PKK, that embraced responsible governance, and made clear to Turkey that there was an economic benefit here and not a military or terrorist threat. So there is precedent here for the United States working with Kurdish groups and actually facilitating and brokering peace and understanding between Turkey and those Kurdish groups. Unfortunately, that's not what we've done over the last 5 years of the time that we've worked with the YPG, and that has been an unfortunate waste of those 5 years that we could have led ourselves to a situation that was not this drastic. I just wanted to make a couple of points to reaffirm General Kimmett's point that it was the right decision to work with the YPG in 2014. First of all, we have to remember that in 2014, President Erdogan was having regular chats with Abdullah Öcalan. Turkey was in the middle of a peace process with the PKK, in which Erdogan was actually reaching out to and working with the PKK, hoping to win Turkish Kurds to support his party and trying to bring that conflict to an end. So at that time, the PKK was not an existential threat to Erdogan or Turkey, but it was seen as a potential partner for peace and a potential political partner. Secondly, General Kimmett mentioned that we spent $500 million training 4 guys. That's not quite the whole story. We spent $500 million training 100 Syrian fighters inside of Turkey, and the moment that they crossed the border from Turkey into Syria, they were captured by al-Nusra, by al-Qaeda-affiliated extremist forces. I don't know how that happens unless there's someone telling them where these fighters are going to be crossing. So I think we had multiple experiences with Turkey leading up to 2014 during the Syrian conflict where we tried to work with them. And although there were certainly failures on the US side in terms of Syria policy, finding common ground with Turkey on who to support among the Syrian opposition, on which fighters to train, and eventually on trying to fight ISIS, we repeatedly failed. And so when it came to this decision of how do we target the center of gravity of the Islamic State's caliphate, we were left with no options other than the YPG. And the other point that I wanted to make is it didn't have to be this way. And the it that we're really talking about right now, the situation that we're encountering right now, is not a situation in which we made a choice between Turkey or the Syrian Kurds. In fact, the choice that we've made has been to abandon and betray both of them. Because what we've seen is that we've not only left behind our partners in the SDF, but we've now also not won Turkey as a strategic prize, but are alienating them through lack of clarity about what we're actually hoping to accomplish, what we're going to allow them to do. And so within a week of greenlighting their military operations, we're now sanctioning them. But it's entirely unclear that this is going to help our relationship with Turkey in the short term. And in the long term, I would say that the future of Turkey as a U.S. ally, as a NATO partner, it really depends upon its ability to resolve its conflicts with the Kurds, both internally and externally. And all we've done is prolong and extend and deepen that conflict. We've put off the possibility of a peace process inside Turkey, I think, for years, if not decades and a generation. And I think all that's doing is actually pushing Turkey further away from the United States, further away from the West, further away from the democratic institutions and values on which the modern Republic of Turkey was founded. And in so doing, we're pushing it closer to Russia, to China, and to Iran. So if our objective in all of this has been to try to win Turkey back, if it's been to try to keep Iran from expanding its influence and aggression in the region, all we've managed to do is increase both of those. And so the issue is not really have we chosen Turkey or Syria, it's how we've done this. And again, General Kimmett made this point really well. The issue is, was a snap decision made over a tweet based on a single phone call the right way to do this, even if the pulling out was an inevitable choice to be made, even if we were going to be leaving, is this the right way to have left? And I think doing so in a way in which there was no impending Turkish operation, as was made clear by the fact that it took them 3 days to actually mobilize and mount the operation that suddenly the United States announced to the world that Turkey was going to be conducting. Having done so with no clear plan with the Turks about what their operations were going to be, no red lines as to what the United States was willing to tolerate, and actually after we had demobilized and demilitarized the Syrian Kurds to make it harder for them to mount a defense, all of those things and have made it an even more treacherous situation. We could have facilitated a deal between the Kurds and Assad if we were really going to leave and we wanted to leave them in control of this territory. So if the choice was about pulling out, if that's what we're debating, there was all manner of things that could have been done to make this much less of a fiasco, as General Kimmett said. And so the debate is not whether we should have pulled out or not. It's really, should we have done this in this manner? And it's hard to imagine being able to do it in a way that would have made the situation any worse than it is right now.